اشرقت نفسي بنور من فؤادي حينما رددت يا رب العباد.
الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. So if you remember last time, we were talking about the marriages of the Prophet ﷺ and the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, and we were talking about the hikmah and the wisdom in why he was commanded to marry so many women. And of course, he was excluded from the general rule, which is to marry four or less. Right? He was given the permission to marry more. And what are the reasons for that? Or some of the reasons that we try and understand. Of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does everything out of His own wisdom and hikmah, and we can't fully comprehend every aspect of that hikmah, but whatever we can, at least we try and understand that. Mainly, one of the reasons because for some of us who are weak in our deen, who are weak in our Islam, we ourselves question that, is this right, what he did? Was he following his hawa? Was he doing this for desire? Did he love women? For some weak Muslims, these are the kind of thoughts they have. And then on the other hand, it is to deter the arguments that some people have amongst the non-Muslims. This is their main point of attack. When it comes to Islam and it comes to the Prophet ﷺ, this is their main point of attack, that he married a 6-year-old, he was doing this, he was just busy marrying women, and so as Muslims, we almost feel ashamed, and we feel like just burying ourselves under the ground, that, oh my God, we can't even answer these questions, and how shameful that our Prophet married so many women. Why do we feel like that? Because we don't know, because we ourselves don't have the answers. So we think they're right, in their attack, they're completely justified, what he did was wrong, and nobody has any answer to it. So today, inshallah, I will give you some explanations which will equip you, inshallah, and it will be your weapon. And anytime anyone brings up the marriages of the Prophet ﷺ, you can very confidently stand and say that Alhamdulillah that he did what he did, and then you can give at least some justification for it. Not that we owe them any justification, because primarily the people who attack the Prophet ﷺ, on the side of the non-Muslims I'm talking about, they are not really attacking the character of Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam. What are they actually attacking? Yeah, they just hate Islam. They just want some excuse to say Islam is rubbish and the Prophet ﷺ is, was everything he did was a big mistake, and they just want to shun this whole thing. So if you do give an explanation for his wives, they will try and find something else to pick on. And then when you give an explanation for that, they will find something else to pick on. So you can see that if it is somebody who is genuinely trying to understand and reason, when you reason with them, they should say, okay, you know what, you make complete sense, and I accept that I'm wrong and you are right. This is the stance of somebody who is genuine, who really wants to understand. But somebody who is just trying to attack, they will just jump from point to point. Every time you explain something, they'll say, okay, like there was a girl that my daughter was having a discussion with. I think she's an atheist. I don't think she follows any religion, to be honest. She's Korean. And every time my daughter, brings an argument to her, she says, well, what about your slaughtering? You slaughter animals. And then she gives an explanation for that, and she says, but what about, why do you all go to Kaaba? Why do you all go round and round the Kaaba? I mean, she's literally jumping from this point to that. I mean, there's no correlation. There's no connection in her argument. It's like, okay, what about the theory of evolution? Why do people discount? I mean, literally, just you can see that this kind of person, they're not after the truth. They're just trying to, find some excuse to say, oh, I really don't want any part of this nonsense. So then, if Allah has sealed their heart, then, hidayah is not in our hands. We can only, give the information to the person and try our best. And then guidance is in Allah's hands. But unfortunately, at the moment, the current situation of the Muslims is such, we are not even in a position to give information because we lack it ourselves. So when we don't have information ourselves, if somebody was to come and ask you, why do you wear hijab? Why do you, when you slaughter an animal, why do you cut its neck? Or they were to ask us any question, why do you go round and round this building, which is called the Kaaba? Why do you pray towards it? The majority of us would not be able to answer them, unfortunately, because our own understanding is so weak, our own connection and our own relationship with our religion is so weak, it is so thin. We're literally walking on a thin thread. If anybody comes and pushes us, we probably fall ourselves. We'd probably get convinced by their argument. So, we've come to a point, I feel, when we talked about the Prophet ﷺ, and we said that Makkah was drowned in darkness, right? And it really needed the light of Nubuwah, right? We talked about the kind of relationships people had. There were brothels and, women sleeping with up to 10 men. And then, they would decide who they want to be who should be the father of this child. Or, men who would make their wives sleep with noble people for noble lineage. And I mean, you can see that people are really, they've gone astray. There's no self-respect, there's no ghira, there's no sense of possession or, sense of jealousy that this is my wife, this is my family. None of that, it's like no shame. Just do whatever you want. Like the Prophet ﷺ said, that if you don't have shame, then do whatever you want. And shame is, one of the branches of Iman. So, we talked about how everything had become really bad and they had really gone deep into the darkness of ignorance, and it really needed that light of Nubuwah to, lit everything up and bring everything back to life. It almost feels to me as if we have returned to that darkness, and we're gradually going towards even more darkness. We haven't reached the pit of the darkness, but we're going towards that kind of darkness where we will once again need the light of of some kind of guidance. Now, of course, we know that the Prophet ﷺ is the seal of the prophets. There's no prophet after him. But who are we waiting for? Isa alayhi salam. And the coming of the Mahdi, and we're waiting for some of these big stars to shine and to re-illuminate and re-light up our world, because our world is becoming dark and dark. If you look around you, there are very, very few people who are actually serious about their religion. I mean, I know when you go to the Haram, for example, you think, oh, so many people are far away from Islam, I can have the Kaaba all to myself, but that's not the case. And, the Haram is full and all of that. But it's almost like people are like Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. It's almost like people are like the foam on the sea, There is no substance in them. They're just there. They have Muslim names and Muslim identities, and that's about it, So knowledge is very, very, very important. So she gets the barakah of the gathering, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. I will inshallah read it to you maybe next time. It's a beautiful hadith. Even if somebody attends this gathering for a purpose other than listening to the dars, like let's say Sister A owes Sister B something, and she says, oh, you know what, I'll go to the dars because she will be at the dars, so I can give her the money that I owe her, for example, right? So she's just come for that purpose, and she sits, and when the dars finishes, she gives her amana and she leaves, right? She still gets the barakah and the blessings of the gathering, which is forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And inshallah, I will try and get that hadith out so I can mention it properly rather than paraphrasing it and telling you in my own words. So we were saying that there is the coming of the Mahdi and coming of Isa alayhi salam that we look forward to, and like I said, that we don't expect a new messenger to come, but for us that will be a new messenger if he comes in our time. And the way things are going, it looks more and more like, the scene is being set for any time for him to arrive. There was something else I was saying, I think.
We are in the dark.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I was talking about ilm, and I was saying that knowledge is very, very, very important. Don't just blindly go with whatever you were taught as a child, from your families, because sometimes our parents want to do good for us, but that's as much as they knew, so they pass that on to us. And then it is our duty, once we have, the aql and the ability to read and understand, that we go and we chase up those sources of knowledge and verify that what I'm doing, is that correct or not. For example, salah. Just make sure that the way I pray, is that the way the Prophet ﷺ taught us to pray? Or maybe there's been a mistake. Because our parents are human beings. They could have made a mistake. Or for example, the way I make wudu, is that the way the Prophet ﷺ made wudu? Or the way I take ghusl, is that the correct way? I mean, in Islam, one of the main things that Islam, you can say, boasts is equality, right? We say the rich is not better than the poor, the white and the black, there is no difference. You can be tall, you can be short. There are no differences. The only thing that Allah mentions, and He says that there is a degree above in that thing, is knowledge. And He says that the people who know are better than the people who don't know. And the first word revealed was not salli, zakki, give zakah or fast. The first word was recite, read, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of His wisdom, decreed for the Prophet ﷺ to be illiterate. That to the extent where the Prophet ﷺ could not read or even write his own name. But this is the decree of Allah. And He did this out of some wisdom. Because the people at that time, their speciality was poetry, lugha, Arabic. Their pride and joy was their language. And they knew nobody can speak or say things as eloquently as they could. Right? Eloquence was their speciality. And every Nabi, his miracle was related to the thing that was a speciality amongst their time. For example, we have Salih alayhi salam. Okay, what did his people do? Who were his people first of all? Anybody? Thamud, yes. The Thamud were the people of Salih alayhi salam. And what did they used to do? They used to carve houses inside mountains. Okay. And if you go to Madain Saleh, if anybody has been, it's in a place called Ula here in the north. It's not even north, sort of like west. It's northwest. So near Tabuk. You will be amazed to see, these massive mountains, and they have made houses inside them. I mean, it would have taken them a long time. Of course, we're assuming, obviously, at that time they did not have, machine drills and cranes and bulldozers like we do. They're using their bare hands. So they must have been really tough and strong to be able to, let alone houses. I mean, I saw a diwan. Do you know what a diwan is? It's a massive place, like a massive hall, where, all the dignitaries will come and sit, and they will have a meeting. And to think that, how would they have made that? It's amazing. So they obviously thought, right, that nothing can outdo us. Because now you start thinking that you have a lot of courage and strength. What does their prophet do? Does anybody know the miracle of Salih alayhi salam? The camel. Where did the camel come from? From a rock. So they're making these houses and they think we're really great, there's nobody greater than us. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends them a living animal that walks out of a rock.
Pregnant also.
Yeah, and they're like amazed. They're thinking that, how can this be, that this is something impossible for them. But it's related to their strength, you see? Like for example, at Isa alayhi salam, what was the people's speciality? It was medicine, curing people, right? And Isa alayhi salam's miracle was curing the deaf, the leper. He had other miracles as well. He could even bring the dead to life, which is something that their medicine couldn't do. So every prophet, he brought a miracle which was related to what the people were already very good at. And then the miracle was like, it left everything else behind, right? Because this is not something from a human being, it is from Allah. And so similarly, the Prophet ﷺ, he comes at a time when language, eloquence is the thing of the time. And everybody knows that he is illiterate. The man cannot even write his own name. And he comes out with these verses which are just mind-boggling for them. They just can't understand that. It's so addictive that when they would pass by, they would cover their ears because they knew that if we hear this, it's going to have an effect on us. That's how amazing these verses and these words were. Because, be very, very clear about this, that the Quran is not the creation of Allah, right? We are the creation of Allah. So we have some good in us, some weaknesses in us. We're not perfect because we are creation. The Quran is the speech of Allah. So it is a part of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it cannot be imperfect. There is nothing imperfect about it. In fact, the more you delve into it, the more you look at it, the more you are just blown away by the perfection and the amazement of the Quran. And so, because their thing was the language, they just heard this and they just thought, wow, that's why they thought, where is he getting this from? The man can't read or write. Where is he coming up with these amazing, verse after verse? And the way it all sits in, and the words, the choice of words, the poetic nature of everything. It was just like, it was very confusing for them. And so that's why they, started to accuse him and say, oh, you're this and you're that. But, coming back to our point, knowledge is very important. And so you need to make sure that just because you know something, you don't stop there. You try and dig in deeper and you try and find out that, is this the correct thing? Even if you hear a story from me, just go back and just try and, look at the references, try and look at a book, even if you want to just go on Google, just see that, where is the story? Can I read the story again? Can I understand it any better? Can I, get more details about it? So try and, keep that thing alive inside you, which is, the thirst of knowledge. And remember that this is like a completely side topic, but our hearts can be one of three kinds. Either your heart is alive and sound, or your heart is sick, or your heart is dead. It can't be anything other than one of these three. Okay? And the majority of us fall in the category of having a sick heart. Okay? And one of the tests, sort of like a scientific experiment, you could say, one of the tests of your heart and to find out which level your heart is at is the Quran. If you hear the Quran and you just can't get enough of it and you just have thirst for more and more and more, then that is the sign of a good sound heart. Whereas if you find that the Quran tires you, or you hear a little bit of it and you think, okay, now let me do something else, okay, I've done some now, that is the sign of a sick heart. So unfortunately, if we have a problem with a fingernail, we go running to the hospital. Doctor, I need to see a dermatologist. There's something wrong with my fingernail. Right? We can't let anything go wrong with our body. But some of us, our hearts are dead. Our hearts are dead. And we haven't even flinched. We haven't even bothered to do anything about it. We've just left it, So we should really be more concerned about our heart than our body. And we should be trying to find a treatment for our heart and be worried when the slightest thing goes wrong. there was a scribe of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. This is like, obviously in the time of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. And he had become blind, and he said to his son, he said, take me to Hassan al-Basri, because he said, I feel that I have a problem with my heart. And so his son, and obviously in those days too, for travel to happen, it was a long process. It was not an easy thing. And plus on top of that, this man was blind, but his son took him to Hassan al-Basri. And he went to Hassan al-Basri and he said to him, he said, please tell me what to do. I'm very worried. He said that I feel that there is some problem with my heart. Hassan al-Basri was known to be good with dealing with matters of the heart. He was not a cardiologist, but I mean like spirituality to do with the heart. And he went to him and he said that I feel that there is something wrong, please help me, because he said, I've tried to do this, I'm trying to do that, but I feel that, there is something wrong with my heart. So what I'm trying to say is that people in the past, their concern was more with their inside than their outside. And today, we are so preoccupied with our outside. Our house should look nice, the car should be clean, our clothes should smell nice, the children should be tidy, they should be going to a good school. I mean, all our external affairs are looked after. Even when it comes to death, I've seen some people, they're taking care of things on this side of the equation. I know people who, for example, have purchased their grave. They make sure that the grave is cleaned regularly. They know where it is. I mean, what preparation are you making? Instead of making preparation for the other side, you're still making preparations on this side. So it's so important that I'm not saying neglect your exterior. I'm not saying that now you should start wearing rags and not take a bath regularly. Yeah, you need to look after your outside, but you need to equally, if not more, look after your inside and make sure that my inside is clean, because this is the only thing that will be of use to you the day you stand in front of Allah. Qalbin salim. La mal, wala banoon. Your wealth, your children, the children that we give our lives for, our day and our night and our months and our years, are just spent making sure that our children are looked after, and they're healthy, and they're eating well, and they're dressing well, and they're studying well. This is not going to help us. The day we stand in front of Allah, the thing that is going to help you is what is inside here, that piece of flesh. If that is in a good condition, then you are okay, inshallah. But if that is not in a good condition, then no matter what you did and how much of it you did will be, it will not mean anything to you on that day. You will just think, why didn't I spend more time trying to rectify my heart? And that's why I'm saying to you, because just like you worry about, I've got this problem in my health, or our body, you need to think, that is my iman sound, is my iman strong, is my heart clean? So inshallah, maybe before Ramadan or something, we can do a little dars on, the heart and how to look after the heart, because the heart is the king and the limbs are its soldiers. And how would you look after a king, right? The utmost looking after goes for the king, more than anybody or anything else. And we need to ask ourselves, are we looking after our heart like a king is looked after? Or have we just left it, tawakkal ala Allah? Inshallah, Allah will sort our hearts out. So anyway, I have to stop getting sidetracked, otherwise we're not going to cover Seerah. I'm just going to offload everything else that's on my mind. So we're talking about the point of attack for the non-Muslims over the Muslims is the marriages of the Prophet ﷺ. Why? Because number one, we don't know why he married so many women, so we can't even answer them. And that's why I was talking about the ilm, that you must know, you must have knowledge, not just to argue with the disbelievers, because the disbelievers, they'll find something else to argue about, right? But you should be firm in your belief. If somebody asks you why you wear hijab, you should know why you wear hijab. Why are you wearing hijab? Are you just blindly following someone? You should know. Why am I doing this? So these are things that you need to sit down and you need to look at and say, regardless of whether anybody asks me or not, I need to know what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Because you need to have an intention as well, right? Because إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. You will be rewarded for your intention. So you must understand what you're doing, why you're doing it. Even if your reason is that I'm just doing it because Allah asked me to do it. I don't know the reason for it. Alhamdulillah, that's a very good reason. That's very good. You can tell people that Islam means submission to Allah. It means to do whatever Allah has asked you to do. Allah has asked me to cover, so I cover. Like for example, after we complete Umrah, we have to trim a little bit of our hair. Why do you have to do that? Because we've been instructed to do that. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructed us to, lie on our side and, put our arm out, you lie on your side and put your arm out. You don't have to ask any questions about it. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of His hikmah, is telling us to do something. We may or may not find the reasoning for that. But if Allah has told us to do it, close your eyes and do it. Sami'na wa ata'na. That should be our stance. There was a sheikh, a da'i, and he was giving a lecture about some Islamic topic I think in Canada or in America, and he mentioned that you should not sleep on your stomach because the ahadith tell you that you should not sleep on your stomach, and that is the way the people of the hellfire will lie down. And so he mentioned that, I think, and somebody asked him that, why do you not sleep on the stomach? And he said, I don't know. But he said that the Sahaba, when they heard that, they stopped sleeping on their stomach. I know as a teenager I used to think that was the best position to sleep in. But when I heard that, I got really, worried, and I thought, okay, you see, when you just hear and obey, you get so much benefit. You don't even realize it. All you did was you heard Allah's hukum and you did it. You just submitted, right? You just followed what Islam, the meaning of Islam is, submission to Allah. Anyway, he said when he was coming back to his country, he was on the plane and he was reading a magazine on the plane. I think it was Time magazine. And there was an article in that magazine which was about spinal surgeries and back problems. And there was a list on the side which said that, the things that you should do to avoid spinal surgery. Because the article was about spinal surgery, but what should you do so that you don't get to that stage? And guess what was number one on that list? Don't sleep on your stomach. You see, we find out things slowly, gradually, as time goes on. But the people who followed the advice and the instructions given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger, alayhi salatu wassalam, they benefited. They succeeded. They got everything out of it. And the main thing they got is they obeyed their Lord. So whatever Allah has told us to do, it's not for Him. This is what I keep saying over and over again to my children, to the sisters I speak to. Allah does not need your salah. Allah does not need your tahajjud. Allah does not need your fast. Allah does not need your dua. It does not increase Allah's dominion if you obey Him. It does not decrease His dominion if you disobey Him. He is free of needs. Put that in your heads. Just engrave it in your hearts that when Allah tells us to pray 5 times a day, it is for us. We need it. And now, scientifically, and they're doing lots of different types of research, and they're finding out the benefits, why you need to do these positions, why you need to fast, what are the health benefits of salah 5 times a day, the health benefit of waking up early, sleeping early. I mean, all these things, Allah has put everything in place. He created us. He knows the way we will function best. And when we disobey Him and we become lazy and we say, I don't want to pray, it's so cold, I don't want to make wudu, and this and that. Who loses? Us. We lose. Because these things have been put in place for our benefit, not for Allah. He does not need it. So, trying to improve yourself in these things, you're going to benefit yourself more and more. The more you do it, the more you will benefit yourself. And inshallah, knowledge is something that if you have it, you spread it, inshallah, you tell other people. And, you reap the barakah of that knowledge then. Okay. Try not to get sidetracked and talk about the topic, which is the marriages of the Prophet ﷺ. Now, the two main marriages of the Prophet ﷺ that mainly get attacked the most are the two marriages which were divinely instructed, which is the marriage to Aisha radiallahu anha at the age of 6, and it's not something normal that other people are allowed to do, but this was something divinely instructed. And the second marriage is the marriage to Zainab bint Jahsh, who was the wife of his adopted son. And as for the marriage to Zainab, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وإذ تقول للذي أنعم الله عليه وأنعمت عليه أمسك عليك زوجك واتق الله وتخفي في نفسك ما الله مبديه وتخشى الناس والله أحق أن تخشاه فلما قضى زيد منها وطرا زوجناكها لكي لا يكون على المؤمنين حرج في أزواج أدعيائهم لكي لا يكون على المؤمنين حرج في أزواج أدعيائهم إذا قضوا منهن وطرا وَكَانَ أَمْرُ اللَّهِ مَفْعُولًا. And remember when you said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking to the Prophet ﷺ, and remember, O Muhammad, when you said to the one on whom Allah bestowed favor, and you bestowed favor, keep your wife and fear Allah, referring to the Prophet ﷺ telling Zayd that keep your wife, because they got married, but they didn't really want to stay married, but he was trying to tell her that stay married to her. While you conceal within yourself that which Allah is to disclose, and you feared the people, while Allah has more right that you fear Him. So when Zayd had no longer any need for her, we married her to you in order that there not be upon the believers any discomfort concerning the wives of their adopted sons when they no longer have need of them. And ever is the command of Allah accomplished. So you can see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, in His holy or in His divine verses, is clearly stating that He arranged the marriage between the Prophet ﷺ and the divorced wife of Zayd. Now Zayd was, like we said, he was the adopted son of the Prophet ﷺ, and people had a stigma, and they had certain reservations that, this is my adopted son, how can I marry his wife? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to remove all those doubts, and so He instructed this marriage to take place so that people don't have any difficulty or problem in the future marrying the wife of their adopted son, because the adopted son is not the same as your own son. If you marry the divorced wife of your own son, now you've created a huge problem in lineage and relationships, and everything gets upside down. But the adopted son's wife is like any other woman. Okay, so this was one marriage that was instructed divinely. The second marriage was the marriage to Aisha radiallahu anha. Now, for the marriage of Aisha radiallahu anha, does anybody know what happened? So the Prophet ﷺ had a dream, and he saw the same dream twice, in which he saw Aisha radiallahu anha presented to him wrapped in a silk cloth. And he said, when I opened the silk cloth, he saw Aisha radiallahu anha, and it was said to him that this is your wife in the dunya and in the akhirah. Let me just read the exact words. So the Prophet ﷺ said, Jibreel came to me and I saw you, referring to Aisha radiallahu anha, covered in a silk curtain. And when I would uncover you, I saw you, and Jibreel told me, this is your wife in dunya and akhirah. And the Prophet ﷺ had this dream twice. And what do we know about the dreams of the Anbiya? that they are revelation. Okay, they are like revelation. For example, when Ibrahim alayhi salam was asked to slaughter his son, how did he get that information? He dreamt it. And you see in the Quran, he goes to Ismail alayhi salam and he says that I saw this in a dream. I saw that I'm slaughtering you. So the dreams of the Anbiya are like revelation because they are true. And the Prophet ﷺ, before he started getting wahi, maybe we'll cover this later when we talk about his prophethood, he saw true dreams for 6 months prior to prophethood. And they were so true and they were so frequent, they nearly freaked him out. Because he would sleep, he would have a dream, and he would wake up and he would see the exact same thing happening. And then he would sleep, he would wake up the next day, and then for 6 months, almost every dream he saw, he would see that this is happening in reality. So he was already starting to think, what is going on? But that was like the precursor to wahi. And interestingly, he had these dreams for 6 months, and then he had wahi for 23 years. And if you find the ratio between 6 months and 23 years, you get a ratio of 1 to, I think, 46. And that's why it is said that true dreams are a 46th part of prophethood. So if you and me, like average people like us, have a dream and that dream comes true, it's meant to be like, a small part of prophethood, because that's just one of the ways the prophets would get wahi. So he went to Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu, and he said to him, he gave a proposal for Aisha radiyallahu anha, and even Abu Bakr was surprised. So he said to the Prophet ﷺ, he said, and we are brothers, meaning to say, that we're very close in age, and you're proposing to my 6-year-old daughter. And he said, yes. He said, we are brothers, and your daughter is suitable for me. Because this was a divine command from Allah. He has been instructed by Allah in his dream twice that this is going to be your wife in dunya and akhirah. Now he has no say in the matter. Nobody has a say in the matter. Sami'na wa ata'na, right? Allah has said it, He will do it. Like I said to you last time, one of the biggest blessings for this ummah was that marriage to Aisha radiallahu anha. And I will explain to you today why. So some of the marriages were to consolidate relationships. For example, he wanted to have a very strong, solid relationship with the 4 khulafa, the future khulafa: Ali, Uthman, Umar, and Abu Bakr. And so there were marriages between all 4. Either, he married their daughter or he gave their daughter to them. Like Ali and Uthman, he gave his daughters. Umar and Abu Bakr, he took daughters and he married them. So they were all like not just close friends and they had the brotherhood of Islam, but they had relationship now, right? Because remember, Allah says in the Quran that you have relationship through 2 means. You have blood relationship and through sihra, through marriage. And that is something, unfortunately, especially in the Indo-Pak subcontinent, you just overlook that. People just talk about their blood relationships. Whereas, once you have a daughter-in-law, she's your relative now. And her relatives are your relative, because through marriage you have relationship, not just through blood. So, and then there was another aspect of his marriages, which was to look after who he felt, from his ummah, from the new Muslims who had a difficult time. Like after Khadija radiallahu anha died, he stayed unmarried for about 2 or 3 years, and then one of the first people he married was Sauda, and she was an elderly woman who had just come from Abyssinia, and her husband had passed away, and she'd had a really difficult time, and she was very upset, and he just married her to just give her support and to look after her, which is why in the later years if you remember, Sauda gave up her night to Aisha radiallahu anha. She was really old. So he's not marrying for desire. If he wanted to marry for desire, remember we established that the first thing that kills all the arguments is that from age 25, when he's a young, youthful, young man, to the age of 50, he has only one wife who has already been previously married. So if he was running after young girls, that's the time to have done it. And the society was encouraging that anyway, right? There was nothing to stop him. There was no Islam at that time. There was, nobody was putting any restrictions on him. He could go, he could get any women of his choice. He could do whatever. Zina was like, it was open, adi. Everything is okay. It's like, I had this driving instructor, this is in London. She's non-Muslim, and her, I can't say husband, her partner is also non-Muslim, obviously. I just used to chat with her while she used to teach me driving. And I asked her, do you have any children? And she said, yeah, I have a son, he's 10 years old. I said, oh, okay. I said, mashallah. I said, so you're married? She said, no, I'm not married. She said, I'm thinking about it now. I said, so you live with the man that you've had the child with? She said, yeah. She said, we live together. We've been together for 10 years. She said, now we're thinking that maybe we should get married. And I thought to myself, this is so messed up. But you see, when you are in the darkness, these things just happen so much that they just become normal. So if she was to go and tell one of her other mates that, I have a 10-year-old son now with this man and I'm thinking now, shall I marry him? They will be on the same wavelength with her. They're going to say, yeah, maybe you should give it another 2 years or 3 years. I mean, what? Are you waiting for him to grow up and go to school and have children and then you're going to marry your husband? Partner. So, the state at that time was really bad. People were so astray. There was nothing to stop him. But that in itself destroys all arguments. If anybody ever attacks the marriage of the Prophet ﷺ, tell them that from 25 to 50, he was married to one woman who had already previously been married and who was 15 years older than him. And so, he was not getting married for that reason. The majority of his marriages happen after prophethood in the last 10 years of his life. Because he becomes a prophet at the age of 40. He's still married to Khadija until 50. About 53, he starts having multiple marriages. Again, one of the reasons he married was for da'wah, for the, like he married, I think it was Juwairiya bint al-Harith, and then the whole community, that whole tribe of Banu Mustaliq became Muslim. So everything he did after Islam was driven towards the cause of Islam, just to establish La ilaha illallah as much as possible. That is the only thing he had on his mind. Okay. Another couple of marriages worth mentioning. Inshallah, we will mention them later in the Seerah, as the Seerah unfolds and as we talk about his life. Is his marriage to Salama, his marriage to Habiba. Habiba was the daughter of Abu Sufyan. And Abu Sufyan was a staunch enemy of Islam. In fact, towards the end, he was the leader of the enemies of Islam. When everybody had more or less died off or been killed off in battles, he became the leader of the non-Muslims. And his daughter was in Abyssinia, and her husband became a Christian, and then afterwards he died. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he sent a messenger all the way to Abyssinia requesting the Negus to marry him to Habiba. And this is said to be the longest distance marriage that the Prophet ﷺ conducted. And one of the reasons he did it was to support Habiba, because she had just, lost her husband and she was Muslim. There was a lot of animosity, no support from her family. Of course, she's the daughter of Abu Sufyan. What support is she going to get? And secondly, to soften the heart of Abu Sufyan. And when Abu Sufyan heard that the Prophet ﷺ had married Habiba, he said, he said, and who is better to marry than Muhammad? They knew so well that he has such good character, that he's such a good person, and they also knew his lineage. They knew he came from a very good family. Everything was perfect. The only, obstacle was Islam. But still, he was happy that he had married Habiba. Anyway. Now, when we talk about Aisha radiallahu anha, before we talk about Aisha radiallahu anha, did I go through the reason for his multiple marriages where I mentioned that... okay, I think I didn't mention it. Okay. Number one, I've already mentioned some reasons to forge alliances with different tribes. Compassion towards his ummah. So some women who he felt, don't have any support and they're in difficulty, he married them for support, even though they were elderly. Salama, Sauda, they were all elderly women. To win the heart of other tribes. The most important reason is what I started last time, was conveying the religion. You know that the Quran has been preserved so that the message of Allah can come to us without being changed or altered. Similarly, his sunnah, because he is the embodiment of the Quran, right? That's what Aisha radiallahu anha said about him, that he is the embodiment of the Quran. So it is very important to preserve his sunnah, as it is important to preserve the Quran, because he is sort of the embodiment, and he explains so many things about our deen to us. So preserving the sunnah is one of the main functions that is done by his wives. You know that he did not have many children. He had 7. He had 3 sons and 4 daughters, all of whom died, passed away. If you remember, we mentioned that the Sahaba were shy, to question him, to interrogate, to fish around for more than one explanation. And like we said, some of them, they said we can't even describe him, because we had so much awe and respect for him that we couldn't even look the man in his face, let alone ask him more than once what he has said. But his wives, especially Aisha radiallahu anha, she was at that age, she's 9 years old when she moves in with him. And I'm sure you all of you must know a 9-year-old who is really intelligent and curious and likes to know lots of things. You can imagine that kind of a 9-year-old marrying a messenger and, finding out every little detail. That's through his wives is how we find out how he spent his nights, how he ate, how he slept. Because remember that he was a statesman, he was a politician, he was a warrior, he was an imam, he was a teacher, right? And all these roles can be conveyed by all the people outside, right? For example, you will all see me as the teacher who gives the dars. You might see me as a friend. You might see me as, doing several other outdoor things. But the only people who will see me inside, in my true, how I really spend my time, my nights, my days, how I eat, how I sleep, is going to be the people right inside my house, my children, right? And like I said, he did not have many children who outlived him or lived long enough. And so his wives, everybody is not a statesman. Everybody is not an imam. Everybody is not a teacher. Everybody is not a politician. But everybody has a family and belongs to a family. And they should know how to behave as a family member. And the only person who will convey that information to us are his wives. Because they see him in the family situation. Nobody else sees him like that. And so, if he had only one wife, number one, it would be very difficult for her to retain all the information, right? It would be very difficult for her to remember each and every aspect of his family life. Number two, if it's only one person who's conveying to us what the Prophet ﷺ was like, it's very easy to discredit her and say, oh, she's a woman, she's probably forgotten, she might be lying, like at the moment, some time ago, they were trying to discredit Abu Huraira. If the non-Muslims succeed in discrediting Abu Huraira, they will succeed in extinguishing over 5,000 ahadith. So, by just getting rid of one individual, you can just knock out a fourth of Islam. That's how easy it is for them. And so that's why, one wife would have been very easy to knock over. But now you have lots of wives who are saying the same thing, who are supporting each other, who are substantiating what happened. So that's the second thing. So one is difficulty in recalling all the information by one person. Second is to discredit one person. You can't discredit so many. The third thing is the family life of the Prophet ﷺ is one of the most important aspects of his sunnah because it relates to everyone. Because like I said, right, that not every one of us is going to be an imam and a teacher, but every one of us has a family and we want to know how to live with our family. We want to know how we should deal with our husbands, our children, our servants, right? We want to know these things. And therefore, it was important to have so many wives to convey this knowledge to us. And so I've mentioned the two marriages that were targeted the most, and I have told you, like I said, one of the greatest blessings for us is the marriage of Aisha radiallahu anha. She had the mind of a scholar. She was very bright and intelligent. Again, like I said, if you think of a really bright and intelligent 9-year-old, you will think, you can see some of the wisdoms in that, okay, that older women would not have had. Because obviously a younger child, their brain is like a sponge. They just absorb everything. So I might go to the same place, for example, as my younger children, and I'll come back and I'll give some information about what happened where we went. But they will be talking about these little intricate details, and you're thinking, really? I didn't see that. But they've observed everything and they've absorbed it, and they're like, it's like you can ask them to, regurgitate every detail and they'll tell you. You will feel like you are there, when they start telling you all the details. So you see the wisdom in that age. And remember I said to you last time, it's almost like we are in the academy or university of Aisha radiallahu anha. From age 6 to 18 is school age, right? You start at 6 and you finish at 18. After that you go to university, right? That's exactly the time period that she was married to the Prophet ﷺ. From the age of 6, it's almost like she went through grade 1 through to high school with the Prophet ﷺ. And she graduated, with flying colors. So imagine if we did not have that wisdom and that intelligence and that, sharpness of Aisha radiallahu anha, how much of the deen we would not have even got. So if anybody attacks that marriage, you tell them that this is the greatest blessing that this ummah has received. That is the marriage of the Prophet ﷺ to Aisha radiallahu anha. Otherwise we would not have got, a quarter of what we have. Okay, so to continue, Aisha radiallahu anha says, she describes herself and says, the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to hear the hadith of Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam, and they would immediately follow it, while I would ask Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam questions about it. And so, being the wife and the most beloved of the Prophet ﷺ, she had this informal relationship with him, that the others did not have. And so she could, they were very respectful, whereas she was a bit more daring, and she could say, like she'd get up in the middle of the night, she doesn't see him, she would say, where were you? Or, she could say things like that to him. Um, you needed that level of intimacy to know about his intimate life in the sense that, his family life, like I said, how he slept, how he ate, how he spent his, days with his family. And she would even argue with the Prophet ﷺ, whereas the others could not afford to do that. This is the messenger of Allah. And but still, he had a lot of love and affection towards her. Once, she was having an argument with him, and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu walked in, and he was very angry with her. He said, "This is the messenger of Allah, and you are fighting with him, and you are arguing with him." So she got scared of her father, and she ran and she hid behind the Prophet ﷺ. The person that she's arguing with is the person she goes and looks for protection. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he was trying to catch her from here, catch her from there, and the Prophet ﷺ was protecting her, until he left. Abu Bakr left, and I can't remember what the Prophet ﷺ said to her, but then they both started to laugh because they were just having an argument, and now this has all become like light-hearted. And Abu Bakr was still really angry, so he comes back in because he hasn't finished, giving her a spanking or something, right? So he comes back in, and he says, when I came back in, they're like laughing. So, he's just... So I'm just saying that, this is the kind of relationship she had with him. Whereas nobody else would dare argue with the Prophet ﷺ or, fight with him. I'm talking about amongst the Muslims. And if you open any book of fiqh, any book of hadith, any collection of hadith, it is difficult not to come across the name of Aisha radiallahu anha. And I don't know if I mentioned to you last time or not. I think I did. I was telling you the levels of the people who have narrated hadith, and number 1 is Abu Huraira. Number 2 is Anas bin Malik, and number 3 is Abdullah bin Umar, and number 4 is Aisha radiallahu anha. And Abu Huraira has narrated over 5,000 hadith, and then from Abdullah bin Umar to Aisha, it's 2,000 and something, 2,600, 2,400. Aisha radiallahu anha, 2,200, about. I'm just giving you approximate estimate numbers, okay? And the Prophet ﷺ did not marry any virgin women apart from Aisha radiallahu anha. She was the only virgin that he married. And remember that this marriage is not the one to go by if you want to see the kind of women he was marrying. If you want to see the women he was marrying, look at all the women other than Aisha and Zainab. Because, those women, he was initiating the marriage. These two were instructed divinely by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And an important event occurred during the Prophet ﷺ's prophethood, and that was a flood that came and affected the structure of Al-Kaaba. Really, what I should have titled today's dars was History of the Kaaba, which is what I wanted to cover, but I doubt I will be able to cover it, but I'll try, inshallah, as much as I can. So this flood came, and it broke parts of the Kaaba, because Makkah is a valley, and the Kaaba is constructed in the lowest part of this valley. And whenever there is heavy rain or heavy storms, the thing that gets attacked the most is the Kaaba, because it's in that low position. All the water and all the pressure and everything goes directly on the Kaaba. Fatima, can you just sit down, please? Sit down. Now, there is some dispute about who constructed the Kaaba first. We know that Allah says in the Quran, وَإِذْ يَرْفَعُ إِبْرَاهِيمُ الْقَوَاعِدَ مِنَ الْبَيْتِ, right? So it means that in English it means that when Ibrahim alayhi salam raised the foundations, that means that there's already something there and he's just building on top of that, right? The most authentic thing I have heard so far, Allah knows best, is that the angels placed the foundation of the Kaaba and the angels placed the foundation of Masjid al-Aqsa when the earth was created. And so that's why these two parts of the land were divine or holy from the beginning. Even when there was nothing, that was a special place. And so that's why Ibrahim alayhi salam just raises the foundation, because there is already some elevation in that place, and that apparently was placed by the angels. And so there's some dispute. Some people say Adam alayhi salam constructed the Kaaba and then it broke down. But it seems like Ibrahim alayhi salam was the first one to raise its walls. There are narrations of other prophets having visited the Kaaba. There are narrations of Hud alayhi salam coming to the Kaaba, of Nuh alayhi salam coming to the Kaaba. And it is said that Isa alayhi salam, when he comes, he will come and he will do Hajj. So there has been an affinity to this area. Okay. The Kaaba has been built about 4 or 5 times, depending on, which, narration you go with. But the first time, if we say, was Ibrahim alayhi salam who constructed it. This is the second time that it's broken with this flood, and this is pre-prophethood. So the Prophet ﷺ, just again a rough estimate, must have been about 35 years old when this happens, and he participated in this construction of the Kaaba. So the flood breaks it down, and then the Quraysh say, okay, we should reconstruct the Kaaba. To reconstruct it, you have to first take it apart and then reconstruct it, because there are bits and pieces broken inside it, right? So they come to the Kaaba with all their equipment and everything, but they don't have the courage to dismantle the Kaaba. You see, they were kuffar, they were mushrikeen, but they were scared of Allah. And they were scared that this is the house of Allah, and how can we be the one to start breaking it? They're very scared. Eventually, one of the tribes, they agreed, they said, okay, we will do it. And they came with all their sons. Sons was very important at that time, because the sons is who would come and, do everything. And what they did was, with a lot of fear and reverence, they started taking the bricks out one by one. And as they're taking the bricks out, they said, oh Allah, don't be afraid. All that we want is good. Oh Allah, don't be afraid. All that we want is good. So it's almost like, when you console your idols, because, you say to your idols that, don't worry, I will give you a sacrifice or something. So this was the level of their knowledge of Allah's asma wa sifat. They thought that They don't know that Allah knows everything. He knows why you're taking the stones down. He knows what's going to happen. They didn't have complete knowledge of Allah's asma wa sifat. So they think, we need to calm him down so some adhab doesn't come on us, because, we're taking, almost as if, Allah is jahil, na'udhu billahi min dhalik, and he doesn't know what's happening, and he thinks that, why are they breaking my house? You can see the jahal in them, right? But you see, they still have this reverence in their heart towards Allah. They know that ultimately what's coming and what's going is from Allah and to Allah. So anyway, they take these stones down, and now they've taken all the stones down, they have to reconstruct the whole thing. Now, the original shape of the Kaaba was a rectangular shape. It was not a square. The hijr that we have today, the semicircular wall, that used to be part of the Kaaba. So the Kaaba would extend all the way up to there. And if you were to imagine, if the building extended up to there, it would be like a rectangle. And it wasn't as high as it is today. The roof was lower down. It's become higher and higher as time has gone past. Now it's very high, but in the past it was not that high. It was a bit lower. It used to have 2 doors, one on the east end and one on the western end. And when they were reconstructing it, it didn't have a roof. When they were reconstructing it, there was a ship that had crashed on a port on the Red Sea. And so somehow they managed to get the wood from that ship, and they got one of the Romans who was on the ship to come and help them transport the wood to Makkah. And they used that wood to make a roof of the Kaaba. So for the first time they gave it a roof. But they made some changes. Number one, they ran out of funds. You see, they used to do all these wrong things. Prostitution, riba, zina, whatever they're doing, right? But they knew that this is wrong. They knew that this is bad and this is not something that Allah likes. So they did not want to use the wealth from that earning to build the Kaaba. They thought this is completely wrong. We can't do that. So the halal funds were so little that they ran out. So they couldn't make it exactly like it was when it broke down. They could only do part of it. So they made part of it. They made this roof with the wood that they got from the ship, and they left part of it. But they had to, you have to cover it, because when you make tawaf, you can't make tawaf inside the Kaaba. That's not a tawaf. You have to make tawaf around the Kaaba. So you have to provide some indication that, you have to go around it. So they did that. So the shape is short. Now it's got a roof. What did they do with the doors? They closed one of the doors off, and the other door, they elevated it. Why? Power. To feel that only some people can enter it, and to feel that you're in charge. Not anybody can just open the door and go into the Kaaba now. You need a staircase, and you need authority. You need to go and ask somebody, that I need to go in, because staircases are not lying around. So just to be in control, they made some of these changes. And this is not the way the Prophet ﷺ thought, So he said later on, that if I had the, if I could, I would bring the door down. I would make 2 doors so that you enter through one and you leave through one. And he would bring it back to the original shape of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So we have 2 shapes now. One is the original rectangular Ibrahim alayhi salam shape, and the other is the Quraysh. The Quraysh made it square with the elevated door and the hijr. Okay. Now, the Prophet ﷺ, he said to Aisha, don't you know that your people had insufficient funds for the expenses? If it were not for the fact that your people were only recently unbelievers, I would have torn down the Kaaba and made for it one door on the east and the other on the west, and I would have included the Hijr area within it. This is when the Prophet ﷺ entered Makkah. During Fathul Makkah, when he conquered and opened Makkah again, that's what he said to Aisha. He said, I would have done that if your people were not new in Islam. But when a person is new, this teaches you some hikmah in speaking to the people. When you speak to people, you should speak at their level. Don't speak over their head, beyond their level. Because number one, it's not going to have any effect on them. And number two, it might turn them away. They might think, that, this is too complicated. I don't think I will ever be anything like this, so I better go back to my wrong ways. So you have to be very careful, and you have to be wise in the way you speak to people, and make sure that you speak to them at their level. And don't do anything which is beyond them, which is beyond their understanding, because it will just confuse them. So if he was to break the Kaaba and reconstruct it, it might confuse people. It might start making people think that I thought people had respect for the Kaaba. They're just breaking it and making it, You don't want them to start getting confused. So he just left it.
So he was not involved in the construction.
He was. The second time, when there was a flood, before prophethood, he was involved.
He was.
Yes. He took part in reconstructing it. And what happened is that each tribe took responsibility for each side. So tribe A said, I'll do this side, tribe B, tribe C, tribe D. Now it came to the black stone and a dispute erupted. For 5 days, 4 or 5 days, they couldn't decide who is going to put the black stone and what to do with the black stone. How should we put the black stone back in? Because everything else is done. They've agreed on everything else. But the black stone, everybody wants to do it. There are many narrations about the black stone. Some saying that it came from Jannah. It used to be white. The sins of the people made it black. So one of the tribes, they brought a bucket of blood and they put it down. And each member of the tribe, from their tribe, they dunked their hands into this bucket of blood and they pulled it out. What are they trying to say? They're trying to say, you better let us put the black stone in, otherwise there's going to be bloodshed. We're ready to give our lives now because we want to put the black stone in. It was a very serious matter. Imagine for 4 or 5 days, all the tribes, war was going to break out on this one matter. Even today, people are mad about the black stone. SubhanAllah, if something, if it is correct that, it's come from Jannah, then. So, now one of the elders of the community, he said, okay, let's resolve this way. The first person to walk into the masjid in the morning, we will give that person the decision to decide who's going to put the black stone. And obviously it was understood that whichever tribe this person belonged to, he will favor his tribe. And he will say, okay, my tribe will put it in, right? So they waited. They're all very eager to see who's going to walk in. And who's the first person who walks in? Is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As soon as they saw him, they said, As-Sadiqul Ameen. They stood up, they said, we agree. What is there to agree? You have already agreed that whoever walks in, that's the person who's going to decide. But they are trying to express their happiness because they knew that this man is extremely honest. He's extremely just. He is not going to take any sides. He's wise. They had so much confidence in him. And this is a few years before prophethood. That's why when he wanted to tell them about Islam, he got up on the mountain and he said to them, if I was to tell you that there is an army marching from behind this hill, would you believe me? They said, of course we would believe you. We have never known you to lie. He said, I am telling you to fear the hellfire and fear Allah and to believe in Allah. And they said to him, they said, you wasted our time. You called us here just for this. You made us leave our businesses just to listen to this. Which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed about Abu Lahab, Tabbat yada Abi Lahabi wa tab. Because he said to the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Tabban yadayk or something like that, that you've wasted our time, curse you and curse your hands or something like that. But this is how much trust they had in him. They knew that if this man has to judge, he will judge correctly. We'll stop here inshallah. Wa subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.